Good evening, everyone who's joining us. Thanks so much for taking time this evening. We are going to get started in just a few minutes. So we'll give you a few minutes to get settled in. Just going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes to let other participants join us, and then we'll get started. See lots of familiar names. Thank you all for being here. Well, Kristin, I know that we're going to need all the time we have for our program this evening. So if you're ready, I'll start with the introduction.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Stacy Brennan, and I'm the Curator of Education for the Lehigh University Art Galleries. If you're not familiar with us, we are a free museum located on Lehigh's campus. You can view works from our collection, which are nearing, there are over 17,000 works of art in our collection. And you can view some of those on our website at luag.org or luag.org. This series of programming is offered in partnership with Shanti Project. We're so grateful for this partnership and with Dr. Baxter, who is joining us this evening, and will lead us in a mindfulness exercise. This program is in conjunction with an exhibition that we have up now in 2 locations called Well, 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 Picturing Wellness in the LUAG Collection. We will view some of those works this evening, and then if you're interested in seeing the full exhibition, you're welcome to contact us for a tour, or you can view them again on our website at luag.org. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Baxter. Dr. Baxter is an associate professor of art and director of the art education program at Moravian College. She's also a Shanti Project mindfulness and art teacher. She is a wonderful artist herself, and I know that I have been really looking forward to this program this evening. In the crazy world that we are all living in, we all need a little bit of mindfulness. And so we are really looking forward to experiencing that with you this evening, Dr. Baxter. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacy. And thank you also to Shanti Project. And I see Maureen Wendling is here, director of Shanti Project. I just want to thank Maureen and also Sarah Dennehy from Shanti Project. Between Stacy and Maureen and Sarah, we really work together to create this series. So it's really been really fun and enriching for me. So just if you're not familiar, Shanti Project is a nonprofit organization based out of Allentown, and they offer mindfulness programs to more than 4,000 children and adults annually across the Lehigh Valley. And I'm one of the teachers. Before COVID, I was out in Central Elementary School and Deer High School doing some art and mindfulness after school programs, where we would combine both mindfulness practices along with a related art activity. But check out their website. They've got a ton of resources for educators and programming for educators. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a structure for tonight's program, just so you know what we will be up to this evening. We'll go till 8 o'clock. I have my phone here, so I'll keep track of time. We'll go till about 8 o'clock. We'll start off both doing some mindfulness practices, but also a short definition of like what mindfulness is. We'll also do some slow looking, which is a term used for really just looking at works of art in a very mindful way. And we'll look at, I have two pieces that I thought we could focus on this evening. And then briefly at the end, maybe a brief discussion about how you think these mindfulness practices on their own, as well as slow looking strategies, might be beneficial to your daily life. And we'll bookend the evening with some of those mindfulness practices. So I have this definition here in my other presentation that I did for the Lehigh University Galleries. I also use this definition. It's a really wonderful, all-encompassing definition from Jon Kabat-Zinn. And it says, mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally, in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So that's kind of a mouthful. It's a lot there to take in. But it's really having a practice in our lives, a sense of attention, where we are noticing not only the things around us, the people around us and what we're doing, but also noticing our thoughts and doing that on purpose and not non-judgmentally. And that's a key term too, because often we have a very self-critical, voice in our head for many of us. So non-judgmentally paying attention in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. And you'll see how this concept can be applied to looking at works of art. And if you don't know already, Jon Kabat-Zinn is a professor of medicine at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. And he was also a student of Zen Buddhist teachers. And he really brought yoga and mindfulness principles from his work with Zen Buddhist teachers and merged them with his study of medicine in the West. And he created what's known as mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. And that's been used really for decades now in treatment here in the West for various attention deficit disorder, anxiety, PTSD, and a host of other conditions. So he was really bridging this gap between the East and the West and bringing mindfulness to, large audiences here. And slow looking, so just so we have these terms defined, slow looking is simply, it's kind of similar. When we are slow looking, it emphasizes, or I should say slow looking emphasizes the noticing of the complexity of how things are at the moment before judging and interpreting. So often when we look at a painting or any work of art, or really anything, we often go right to judging and interpreting, and we want to know what it means, what's the value of it, figuring it out. We often jump to judgments and interpretations without really spending a lot of time just noticing. So slow looking is really a whole movement or a whole approach to looking at and appreciating artwork. And also I just sent Stacy a PDF with lots of resources on slow looking. So that'll be posted on the website, and you will also get that emailed to you, I think, too, Stacy. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So here I have this funny picture. When I was preparing for today, I found this image. It's from an article from the BBC News, and it's called "Slow Art, It Will Blow Your Mind" was the name of the article. And typically, you know, if you go to art museums, especially the big ones in New York City, for instance, or here at the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa, this is kind of the experience. And I have another image. So if you turned around, this is the aesthetic experience of viewing the Mona Lisa. It's kind of the opposite of like mindfulness and slow looking, although I would argue you can do mindfulness and slow looking even in a crowded room like this. So this is kind of the opposite of what we're going to do tonight. And more and more art museums, and here, this is the Museum of Natural History in London, museums and galleries are offering slow looking activities. There's actually a National Slow Art Day in April. And museums have events around this. And here you see a picture of a yoga class happening at the Museum of Natural History in London. And, you know, the premise behind it is if we can kind of slow down and have a moment of transition between our daily lives, which are, you know, so busy and so, you know, we're filled with all kinds of overstimulation and distractions. You know, if we can have a moment in between that and seeing artwork, that we can have a more enriching experience. So this was the list of resources that will be on that PDF. So you can, if you'd like to take a look at how other art museums integrate slow looking practices in their programming. So what I thought we could do then, I have this blank slide because I thought we could actually take a moment now and do that transition, have a few mindful moments to kind of transition from your busy day. I'm sure everybody had lots going on these days. So how can we transition from our day-to-day life into kind of a more mindful state of mind to help us look at art in more meaningful ways? That's what we're going to go for tonight. We'll see what happens. So if you'd like to play along with me, then we'll try some mindfulness. And mindfulness then is simply just getting comfortable first in your seat. So if you're sitting in a chair, you can have your feet perhaps flat on the ground. If you're sitting on the couch, that's okay too, or in a recliner. I fully embrace the recliner. You can even be laying in bed. You know, other mindfulness teachers might want you to sit up straight and have a nice straight spine. And that's a good thing too. But my approach is more about the intention. So just take a comfortable seat. It is helpful to have your feet resting flat on the floor if you can. I have my hands, the palm of my hands resting on my lap here. And just take a few deep inhales and exhales. Maybe inhale through your nose deeply. And exhale out your mouth. You can even sigh it out. If you want to just do a few shoulder rolls, you know, just to kind of get a little bit of the tension out of your shoulders and upper back. If you want to roll your head, or move your ear from side to side. Just to kind of intuitively get some wiggles out, right? So however you'd like to just move around intuitively. And when it feels appropriate, just come to stillness, and you can either have your eyes closed, you can have your eyes just gazing down at the floor, you can be gazing at the screen. I have this neutral kind of screen here, if that's okay, or have your eyes closed. And we'll just land here. Again, if you want to take a few more deep inhales and exhales. And just bring your awareness to the room that you're in. Just noticing the sounds that are around you. Notice some of the most far away sounds. Maybe there's someone upstairs with the television on, or maybe you can hear the traffic outside your window. So just see if you can go to the edges of your ability to hear. What's that farthest away sound? And then notice a sound that is pretty close by. So maybe there is the heat coming out from one of the registers on the floor, or maybe you have an old radiator and you can hear those sounds. Maybe there's a clock ticking nearby. And just now see what you can experience when you're inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your nose. And just pay attention to see if you notice any smells, or maybe you can just notice the temperature of the air as you are inhaling through your nose. And then notice how your body warms the air. So as you exhale through your nose, the air is probably warmer. And see if you can follow that breath on an inhale through your nose, noticing that cool air right at the edges of your nostrils as you inhale. And follow that breath deeply down into your belly, filling up your whole belly. And then when you exhale, just see if you can draw your belly in slightly and just exhaling through your nose again. And again, just noticing that experience of the breath and the air, the quality of the air as you exhale. And just do that a few times on your own, just noticing the temperature of the air as you inhale, or if there's any scents that you can smell as you inhale. Does the air quality feel dry? And then just begin to let go of that breathing pattern, that noticing. Just come back to a regular breath. Maybe just wiggle your fingers a little bit and notice those sensations as you wiggle your fingers. Maybe wiggle your toes as well. And then we'll just bring our awareness back to the room. And when you're ready, you can just flutter your eyes open. Again, if you want to take a deep inhale, maybe also roll your shoulders again, and just take a few moments to just move around a little bit in small movements to kind of arrive back here in front of your computer screen or your phone. So what we were doing there with our mindfulness practices is really going to kind of follow over into looking at some artwork now. And if you noticed, I asked you to pay attention to the quality of your senses, things that you can hear, things that you can smell, even a sense of touch a bit and movement. And that's one approach to slow looking, using our senses. And I've picked out an image here. Stacy mentioned that some of the images tonight are from the Lehigh University Art Gallery's Well exhibition. So this photograph comes from that exhibition. And I've purposely chosen it and not given you any contextual information about the artist or the title or the date or anything like that. For these first few moments, we're just going to have a chance to just really look at a couple of images, maybe one or two, and look. I invite you to look deeply at them. So for this one, what I thought we could do is just spend maybe 2 minutes, and I can keep an eye on the time. Maybe just 2 minutes, like literally just looking at this photograph. You know, in some of the research and writing on slow looking, there's this criticism that we only spend about 7 seconds looking at a work of art when we go to a museum or a gallery. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But of course, we're going to spend more time with a couple of works of art to see if we can kind of discover something new about the piece and maybe even about ourselves. So why don't we just take a look at this piece for 2, maybe 3 minutes, we'll see. And then we'll talk about it as a group. If you love to keep notes, you can keep notes. You can just view. You can write in a journal, take notes on your phone. But But to start out with, just let your eyes wander. Just like we do in mindfulness, we want to just observe without judging or shoulding. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Just let your eyes kind of wander over the piece and pay attention to your first impressions. What did you notice first here? Are there specific aspects of this photograph that kind of stand out to you? So, for instance, again, you might use your senses in looking at this piece. What is the quality of the light like? What might be the temperature of the room? What might be the feeling of those leotards? If you've ever worn one as a little kid in dancing school, what does that feel like? Or having your hair pulled back very tightly? So kind of tapping into your senses, things that you see, what might we hear, smell, touch, or the textures around us. Notice the setting also. And are there other objects in the room or in this space? Even what is this space? Are we in a hallway? Are we in a room? What are the things that you're seeing that help you decipher like what I'm looking at? That's awesome. I see Gabriella wrote down light. And you can certainly write in the chat, or we can just look for a few minutes without writing, completely up to you. Also, as you're viewing, are there details? I've heard the expression, try to spot the details hiding in plain view. Are there things, again, if we spend just a few extra moments, instead of rushing by images, do new things sort of emerge, kind of surface? We have some great comments in the chat. We can certainly do that. Okay, so let's get into it. I wanted to give you some kind of no stress time to just look, but we have some wonderful observations there in the chat. Little girls trying to be patient, but feeling in capital letters, great anxiety, waiting and waiting. Feelings of youth and no inhibition. The open door in the background. Is there one in the back? The open door here in the foreground, maybe even in the background. I kind of wonder what that bright light is in the background. I feel like, is that an open door to the outside? But certainly in the foreground as well. So I'm wondering, with these observations, things like the little girls are trying to be patient, but feeling great anxiety, waiting and waiting. If Kim, our participant, or if anybody else wants to write in, what do you see or what they say, what is the visual evidence that makes you say that we get this sense of like great anxiety? In capital letters, feeling great anxiety. What is it? What do we actually see? And Kim says their faces are looking anxious. Notice each one of their faces. If you go from the girl at the very front of the line, and then the one behind her, the third girl, we can't even see her face. Yep, some of their faces look curious. So we have this, each of those expressions are a little bit different, but they're all this kind of like curiosity or anticipation, maybe. Wow, look at these wonderful comments. Oh my God, this is awesome. Yeah, and we won't get a chance to go through all of them, but even things like the feelings of youth and no inhibition, think about, again, what is it that we see that brings up that feeling of youth and no inhibition? Because that feeling of youth isn't one thing that we can identify. It's usually, very, it really depends on the situation. So that's a wonderful observation. So some of you in the chat, if you notice, you're saying things like they look anxious, it's got this feeling of youth, but on the other hand, notice these details that you're noticing, like that it's a large old building, which is super interesting because we can't actually see much of this building at all, right? We're just seeing maybe a hallway of it. But there are qualities about it that make it seem like this is definitely a big old building with these like oak doors, it just in the background. And Maya says, I like to think about the contrast between the geometry of the floors and windows and the human body. Beautiful. I mean, that's the kind of thing, I think, that if we just spent a few seconds in a gallery and just kind of went past this piece, we might not have even, we might not have noticed that so much. So that's a great example, Maya, of like what happens when we kind of slow down and notice that contrast, right? The squares on the floor, the rectangles of the window panes, and then these, wonderful little children and their bodies. I have a couple of close-ups too, because one of the fun things about doing slow looking in an art museum, or when you get to go to the Lehigh galleries again in person, is to be able to kind of stand way back and zoom in close and to, walk from side to side. It's hard to do that through Zoom. So I wanted to give a couple of details so we can really, see these expressions. I see Susan comments, the distant sounds coming from an auditorium full of people. Oh my God, right? That's awesome. Maybe that's what the girls, are reaching or looking out towards. Maybe they hear those sounds, right? That anticipation of people finding their seats. Maybe there's someone introducing this dance that's about to happen, and they're getting ready. And Susan also notices the peak of white cotton emerging from the bottom of the leotard. Ugh, Mom. I mean, we've all, if you have ever worn a leotard like that, we just know how that feels, like in our bodies, like it's this muscle memory, I think. The clumsiness of those dance slippers, too big, too small, never just right. I think I have another, let me see if I had another kind of close up. Yeah, it absolutely. Or if you might, I would get hand-me-downs from my cousin, never quite fit right. So that kind of like tactile experience is also another one of those lessons that we can transfer from a mindfulness practice into looking at artwork as well. I love all these comments. Stacy says the warm, bright light coming from the background, like stage lights in a way. Yeah, the anticipation of going out on stage. Absolutely. But I love the girl at the very front of the line. She's like, she's got this. She's on her way out, for sure. And Colleen says, I see only one girl in a white leotard, way in the back. Absolutely. So yeah, again, that's another one of those details that maybe we would have not noticed had we gone by too quickly. Donna says, I don't see anxiety, I see anticipation and knowing they have done what they have been asked to do with their arms and standing tall and waiting for the permission to indulge in the activity. Yep, that's so interesting, right? If you've taught little kids, they are trying to line up and do what they've been told to do, putting their hands on their hips. That's awesome. These are all such wonderful comments here. Again, if you read through all the comments, notice how some are noticing concrete things like the black and white shoes, and how Susan had mentioned some of them maybe don't fit quite right. But then on another comment, like Donna says, the first girl, her body says, I got this, right? So we're noticing both concrete elements, but then we're also interpreting too, based on what we're seeing. So those are awesome, awesome comments. And that's another premise for slow looking, is that it's not just an exercise in describing and recalling facts about an image. It often just allows us kind of the space on which to build the next level of analysis and interpretation. Oftentimes too, when I'm working with kids and adults, having time to just describe and just looking at a piece is really useful, because sometimes, and maybe this has happened to you all or some of you, where you weren't quite sure what was happening, or you didn't notice everything in the scene and somebody cleared it up, or noticed things for you. So just describing and having this common time to kind of agree and share what we see provides a really nice foundation for then getting into deeper analysis. And the last comment here, Nancy says, the little girl has hair that escapes the confine of rubber bands and bows. And that's, if you've had long hair as a kid, if you have children, right, there's that perennial hair, no matter how much you comb it, how much hairspray went into this beforehand. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, I want to keep going. So I should tell you, I think here, so now I'll give you all the answers. You can see the artist and the title of the piece and the year that it was made. And it's interesting because from my research that I did on Peter Turnley, the American photojournalist who took this image, he's known to take photographs of these very everyday occurrences that also underscore the human condition. And things that make us human, such as birth, age, health, sickness, death, and important events in our lives. He used his camera as a tool to draw attention to the hardships and injustice that people face, as well as capturing the aspects of life that are beautiful and inspirational. And you might think I'm crazy, but there is a connection between that image and the next one I'm going to share with you. And the more I prepared for tonight, the more I feel like I want to dive into this even more. So let's try it again. This is also a photograph. I'll stop talking. And why don't we just take a few moments to just, allow yourself some time just to observe. It's like mindfulness, just allowing yourself to just land. Now, this one's very different, right? Because we don't have the same kind of storytelling qualities to it, maybe. But now maybe notice the shapes. Gabriella saying there's a rock. And notice again here, remember when I asked you when we were noticing sounds in the room, and I said, notice what's furthest away. Notice in this one, what might be towards the edges, outside the picture frame here, or imagine what might be there. Oh, and I see a hand up. I just don't see your name. Did you have your hand up? Did you want to, I'm sorry. No? Okay. So you could imagine, what's beyond the picture frame here? Is there anything familiar? Gabriella said she thought this was a rock. Is there something familiar? Is it unfamiliar? What's super interesting too is noticing the positive and negative shapes, which simply means the positive shapes or forms are those objects that the artist is taking a picture of, those actual things there. So that's the positive. The negative is all that space around it. So we have another comment coming in. Michael is saying, it feels very cold. Oh my God, that's great. It reminds me of a wooden block sitting on a tile because the edges are rounded. There is also the seam in the background across the horizon. Yeah, I was going to mention that too, Michael. there's a really faint horizon line back there, I think. Michael and I can see it anyway. It's a tiny laptop here. But it looks like a very faint horizon line back there. Rachel is saying the shadows are curious. And Leslie is saying there's contrasting shapes, different tones and textures. The form seems to be floating above the rock. Yeah, it does look like that. They seem like they're floating in air. There's a bright light in the background. Like in the former picture, Anita, I hadn't even thought of that. That's awesome. There is a bright light in the background, like in the first picture. Maya is saying, it felt cold to me at first, but the tonal range is more inviting the longer I look at this piece. That's awesome. Yeah, again, giving ourselves some time and space. You know, what our initial impressions were sometimes change. That's awesome. John is saying it's a stop action of a cylinder that was just dropped onto a block. Love that. So these are all wonderful, you know, close observations. And just like in the first photograph, if we had more time to keep going, right, we could go into, you know, more about shape, texture, negative versus positive space, the scale. Like, is it a rock? I think somebody said, yeah, Allison here, it could be a bullet or a pill. So I was talking to someone else and they said, is that a pill? So we don't even really know the scale. Someone is saying it's reminiscent of the birth of photography. So yeah, we get this, you know, ethereal quality to this piece. And I have some close-ups too. I think this one makes it seem like it is floating a bit. And here's the answers. So it's by Gladys Triana, who is a Cuban photographer living in New York City, still living in New York City. And it's called Stillness. And I thought, what an appropriate image to have for our talk tonight. But when I was reading about her, it was written that she has a constant need to avoid a traditional way of seeing. And so it is today with her photography, where she attempts to align the emotional realm with the poetry of the visual image. And just to circle back to the first image, I said that Peter Turnley, the photojournalist who took the picture of the ballerinas, was interested in capturing the human condition. So was this artist, Gladys Triana. She used photography as a means of expression and reflection on the human condition. In her photography, the artist transforms small objects from daily life into sculptural shapes, creating an iconography that speaks eloquently about fragile surroundings in our journey through this world. And some of the ideas behind her photos is isolation, ephemeralness, memory. And I'll just kind of end our talk here because I want to do a little more mindfulness with you. It's just, I have a couple of images that, again, seem completely unrelated. But again, could provide a really interesting moment for slow looking. So Gladys Triana, the photographer who did the image there on the right, she was really influenced by Caravaggio and Rembrandt, painters from the Baroque period of art history. And you can see here, a lot of you mentioned in the chat that the light and the shadow, they actually become like part of the objects that we're looking at, right? They're very much like elements in that photograph there on the right. That bright light in the background is, you know, it's not just light, it's like another character in the scene. Just like these artists like Caravaggio was really interested in this high contrast of light and dark in his paintings. So when I read that she was influenced by these artists, I thought, let me put in a couple of those images, because obviously Rembrandt and Caravaggio are doing figurative oil paintings. But there's this wonderful quality and character, like the light has a character, a role to play in the image. Like here, do you notice how his hand of this figure is actually, you can see the shadow on the coat of this other figure here. So just like in Triana's photograph, you know, light is absolutely used in this very kind of deliberate way. Again, really underscoring some of her metaphors. She says, in this, it's written, in this body of work, the artist continues to question the presence of shadows in the human mind. So they're used as like a metaphor, right? Light and shadow. The way in which we fabricate and or perceive the absence of light and darkness, how we weigh the mysterious persistence and silence of a visual secret, how nature, visible or invisible, affects us, how photography paralyzes memory while the eye nourishes our sensibilities and sense of meaning. So she's really using light and darkness as this metaphor for maybe a light and darkness within ourselves and our perceptions. And again, not dissimilar to how other painters or other artists have done that across time. And so, okay, I've got my blank slide there again. So just to finish up, I know we only have a few minutes left. The hour went super quickly. I thought we could do another little mindfulness practice, and then I'd love to just hear any final comments. We can have a little bit of a wrap up. So if you'd like to, again, to practice a little bit of mindfulness, again, we can just take a nice comfortable seat. If you want to get your wiggles out again, take a few deep inhales and exhales. And again, if you'd like to have your eyes closed or just a soft gaze down at the ground, that's fine too. But now we'll just take another moment to just transition from your whole day. And hopefully now you can get ready for bed soon. Hopefully you don't have anything else this evening. So just taking a few deep inhales and exhales. And then just allow your breath to come to its natural, just natural breath. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to change anything. As you're noticing your breath, just see if you can, again, without changing anything, just notice where and when your breath arises. So notice when the next inhale just occurs. And just follow that breath. Bring your attention along that ride as you inhale. And follow your breath as you exhale. Just paying attention to the entire length of the breath. And maybe there's a slight pause at the end, maybe not. Just notice how your breath kind of dissolves. And then without us even doing anything, the next breath just is right there to begin again. Just noticing your inhales from the moment it appears to the moment that inhale then turns into an exhale. And if you do notice your mind start to wander, or just thoughts start intruding, just see if you can just kind of observe them and just let them kind of float by. Some visualize thoughts like just laying on the ground and just watching clouds float by. See if you can do that with your thoughts, just, as they come and go, just allow them to float by without judgment. And then just bring your awareness back to your breath. And then on your next inhale, if we can just sit up a little bit straighter, and then take a nice deep inhale just to clear the mind. If you want to exhale out through your mouth and sigh it out, you can do that. And then a second breath. Let's take a nice deep breath in for each other and for all of us who took this hour out of a really busy day to just stop. And then our third deep inhale. Let's take a deep inhale for ourselves this time. So deeply inhaling through the nose. And exhaling out through your nose or mouth. And again, when you're ready, if you want to just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, maybe do some head circles a little bit. Roll your shoulders, and you can just blink your eyes open, and we can arrive back together. And I know we're 1 minute over time, but if anybody wants to maybe share an idea or two or put in the chat, maybe how you might take this session into your daily life, maybe just taking a moment to pause, look, to sense, to shut down that thinking mind. So hopefully you can take some of those ideas with you. Great, thank you so much. I have my email there too, if anybody would like to reach out to me. And I know Stacy had a few announcements to make as well.
Thank you, Kristin. This was such a wonderful exercise and in close looking, also in mindfulness and relaxing and de-stressing at the end of the day. We're so grateful. And I just wanted to mention that we have a number of other exciting programs coming up. Notations is a spoken word poetry event. LUAG at Lunch with Ray Ukan, who is a senior, will also lead us through some mindfulness exercises. And then our new Taste of Art program, which is really exciting, pairs culinary experiences from the south side of Bethlehem with works of art from the LUAG Collection. We have free kits available for pickup, which help you kind of with the recipe at home. So we hope you'll take advantage of that. And all of that can be found on our website. But we are grateful to Shanti Project for this opportunity to bring this program to all of you, and especially to Kristin for leading us through these exercises. We do plan to offer more of these programs in the future, so please keep in touch with us and don't hesitate to reach out at any time. I will follow up with an email with the resources we discussed this evening that Kristin put together, as well as a link to that evaluation that I put in the chat. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was lovely, Kristin.
Oh, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.